Hi there, Elena. Let's take a look at these new essays you've submitted. The first one is about car sales of the 3 brands in these different countries. Let's see what you wrote here. The bar chart shows the sale of 3 brands of cars in 9 European countries in 2018. Ford is the most used in Holland, where they are more than double compared to Audi and BMW, and in Belgium, where the other 2 brands are nearly not sold. In UK and Hungary, they are as popular as BMW, whereas in France, their sales are similar to the Audi. Then, in Italy and in Germany, they are not used a lot. Regarding Audi, we can see from the chart that they are as common as BMW in Germany, Poland, and Hungary. However, they are not required by the population in UK, Belgium, and Italy. Moreover, in the other countries, they are sold, but not in huge quantity compared to the others brands. Finally, BMW are the most sold in all countries except for Belgium and Holland. Overall, in France and Hungary, the 3 brands are sold in equal amount, whereas in the other countries, consider there are some differences, especially in Belgium and Italy. Okay. So the good news about this is that the grammar, for the most part, is pretty good. I mean, it's accurate. You didn't have a ton of errors. I decided I wanted to read the entire thing through because I was concerned about something, and as I read it, my concern continued to exist. The concern that I have here, Elena, is that there is absolutely zero data, none. You didn't include any numbers at all. And so with a task 1 like that, it's such a shame, but you're not going to be able to get above a 5 because there's zero data. Look at the band descriptors and you'll see where this falls. So what you did is you compared countries to each other and car companies to each other, but you didn't actually include any numbers. It was just a comparison without ever mentioning the actual figures themselves. And so that's a huge problem. That's really going to lower your score. So that's the kind of mistake you don't want to make. What did you do? You started talking. I also want to get a sense of how you organized this. So you talked about Ford, and then you started talking about I was really kind of confused about your organization because it wasn't clear how each paragraph was organized. So look at this. First, you talk about Ford, and then you talk about, okay, this is all about Ford, and then you're comparing Ford to BMW, and then you're comparing it to Audi. So that was confusing to me. And then you're talking about Audi, and you're comparing it to BMW, and then you have this statement, which I thought really shouldn't have belonged here. It's probably one of the first things you should have said. Okay, you had that at the very end. So I can't really say that I agree with the organization of this. And I certainly have to tell you that you absolutely need to include data, meaning with numbers, with data, with figures, something. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to show you a way. It's a way. It's not the only way, but it's a way that I think is really effective in organizing this. Okay. So you have a few different things happening here. Let's actually talk about this. Because one thing you didn't really talk about at all, partially because you didn't talk about numbers, is you didn't talk about these totals, really. I mean, you kind of did, but not really. So what I would do here is I would first do my introduction. Your introduction was fine. Then I would give my overview. I'm always a big fan of putting the overview right after the introduction. There are a ton of reasons why. I don't want to get into them, but I always think it's a good idea to put your overview straight away. So for me, my overview would probably be that the most cars were sold in Hungary, and the most purchased brand of car was BMW. That's my opinion. Some people say Ford. I think it's BMW. So that's what my overview would be. Then what I would do is I would spend a paragraph talking about these total numbers, but I would talk about numbers. So I would use these figures that are along the side here. So the first thing I would do is I would say that Hungary was a country that sold the most of the three car brands. More specifically, it sold 400,000 cars altogether. This was followed by France, which sold just over 300. The fewest cars were sold in Belgium at just under 100,000, uh, while second to last was Italy with just over, you could say 120,000 cars sold. The remaining countries, and you can name them here, all sold between 200 and 270,000 cars. And then you're done with that paragraph, and you've given us a good idea of where these numbers lie, okay? Without really overloading us with too many specifics, we at least have a good frame of reference. And then you can talk about the actual car companies. So I would first talk about BMW since it's probably the easiest number. Here I would again use these numbers and I would say for all but one country, uh, approximately 100,000 were sold throughout these nations. Only Belgium sold a negligible amount of BMWs. As for Ford, approximately 150,000 cars were sold in Hungary and Holland. The least Ford cars were sold in Germany and Italy. You can see what that number is. It looks like it's about 20,000, maybe 10,000. I don't know. Okay. And then again, you could use that kind of range that we talked about before. You could say the remaining countries all sold between 50,000 and 100,000 Ford cars. And then you can do something very similar for Audi. So that's how I would organize this. Introduction first, then your overview where you talk about the country with the highest, and then which car was sold the most, and then you spend a paragraph talking about those total numbers because that's the point of a stacked bar chart. They want you to focus on the total. Okay, so they want you to focus on this 400, this 300,000, etc. But they also want to show you how it came about, like what figures made that up. So you do have to talk about this total number, and then you can spend a paragraph talking about the individual car companies, very much like I did. So not like a ton of details, but um, enough to make it clear. I mean, this is one with, I think it's like what, 36 pieces of information. So, of course, you can't and you shouldn't mention everything, but you can mention the things that are key. And the key things in a bar chart like this is really the outliers. So those highs, those lows, and then just kind of smush together all of those figures in the middle. That's how I would recommend doing this, okay? So let's move on. But again, really, really important. Do not forget to include numbers, include data, because without it, you're not going to get anything above a 5 for task achievement. So let's take a look at this essay about pollution. What are the reasons for it and how can it be solved? Nowadays, the quality of air that is surrounding, not ourselves, that is surrounding us is becoming worse. This change is more marked in big cities such as New York, London, and Madrid, and the population is starting to realize and feel this problem. As far as I am concerned, I strongly believe that this problem has to be solved as soon as possible because it is not healthy for our future and for our life. In this essay, we'll explain the reasons why the situation is getting worse, and I will give some possible solutions that we can use to solve it. Okay, fine. Yes. In cities, especially large ones, the amount of pollution is increasing day by day, and the reason for this is twofold. It's one reason. Firstly, cars used cars used by the population are rising because even if there are a lot of public transports, there are still a huge quantity of people who prefer to use their own cars to travel. Secondly, as a consequence of rising As a consequence of the rising number of people in the world with an L, the request, which request is increased, and so the industries have to produce more quantity of products. This is unclear. I don't know what a request for what. So industries have to produce more products. Clean it up. If you can say something in one word, then don't use two. If you can say something in two words, don't use four. They'll have to produce more products. That's it. Unfortunately, this causes no. This cause the word. This is awkward. This is something wrong with your grammar here. Unfortunately, this causes the worsening of the quality of air. Again, reduce these words here. You don't need them all. You could have said the same thing. It would have been clearer in fewer words. So look at this. Unfortunately, this worsens the air quality. It's the exact same message, but it's so much cleaner. Okay? So this worsens the air quality. For example, some friends of mine try to avoid contractions, write the full word out. For example, some friends of mine do not like using bus or train, but they use their personal transports, okay, which is generally their cars because they feel more comfortable and safe. Okay, fine. Let's move on. However, the point is that maybe now they feel more secure, but then the consequences are not huger, larger, and more dangerous. Although the number of people informed about the current situation are careful, although the number of people informed about the current situation is increasing, this is not enough. Personally, I think that the government has huge responsibilities in solving this problem. Firstly, it is important to encourage people to use bicycles or public transport, singular, instead of cars, which produce smog. Why? Tell me why that's a solution. Secondly, everybody should try to recycle goods such as paper, plastic bottles, and clothes with an E. Why? Why would that help us? Finally, the use of electric cars should increase in the population because they are beneficial for our earth. Okay, why are they beneficial? So, what you did here is you basically presented a list of solutions, but you never actually explained to us how or why they are solutions. And this is why you kept seeing me say, why, how. This is something that your essay needs to include. Otherwise, it just reads like a list, and a list is not a full paragraph. Okay? Um, so, it's not just enough to present the solution. You also have to explain to us how your solution is a solution, why your solution is a solution. What would it solve? How would it solve it? Okay, so you need to go a little further into detail. And that's more important than having a ton of solutions. You could have two, but you definitely need to develop them and explain how and why they are solutions. So, for example, like I don't really feel you needed this portion here. Okay. If it were up to me, I would have done this paragraph like so. I would have said, despite the scope and range of the problem, there are numerous solutions that could mitigate this issue. Firstly, government has huge responsibilities in solving this problem. Um, One way they could do this is by encouraging people to use bicycles or public transports instead of cars, which produce smog. Okay, and then that makes sense. You're connecting these two. They could encourage people. They could encourage people by tax exemptions or by subsidizing the purchase of bicycles. So give solutions, but definitely support it. Okay. And then here, how is this a solution? Secondly, everybody should try to recycle goods such as paper, plastic bottles, and clothes. This would result in fewer items in our landfills, which destroy both the ground and the air, which would improve the quality of the atmosphere around us. So you see, you really kind of extend these things, and that's really important. So, from the arguments and the examples, plural, given, I firmly believe that the future is in our hands. We are increasing the level of pollution, but we are the same people who can stop it or reduce it. Sometimes we should try to break our comfort zone. Not sometimes, get rid of sometimes. We should try to break our comfort zone and we should think more about our planet. Okay, that's fine. All right, Elena. So, good effort. You're doing really well, but just keep in mind some of the things that I talked about in this set, primarily with your task one, which I think needed quite a bit of work, quite a few changes, and then here little things that would have really made a huge impact. Okay, so go ahead, make the corrections. Review, see if you can apply some of these in your next set. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be here waiting. So good luck to you.